wrap-up period. So this could also be an opportunity where if that, even for us to document lessons learned from this. So if we have one system, what is needed to actually send the referral. I think Lisa sent it 2 ways, right? As a service request and a CDA document. But what is needed, on the receiving side to be able to receive it and render it.
I think it's really looking at, and Nancy, if you could look at this, I hope you guys will save the chat. Do they have that function, Evelyn, where you can preserve the Zoom chat when it's done?
If not, if you sent it privately.
Oh, okay. I did send it just to Nancy. So let me see if I can harvest that back up and
Lisa, I can get it all off here. I'll get it off and I'll send it to, and I'll pull in the developer. We'll look at it. It's just I couldn't do it in the middle of the demonstration. That's all.
I know. It's so hard to process so much information coming at you and all in the same direction. So if you guys can grab it out of there, that's great. But Evelyn, it has to do with how transaction bundles are processed and what the expectation is when you post the transaction bundle. Mm-hmm. And the issue is affecting the posting of any kind of resources. So the way that resources reference other resources, they do that by an ID. And when the system that's doing the posting is representing the way that those references reference each other. Like I'm using my set of numbers, think of it that way. I use my set of IDs when I construct the transaction bundle and I post it to a FHIR server. And that server is responsible for basically walking back through the resources that it stores on its side, and it has to change the IDs to IDs that make sense on its own server. And as it walks through, take the example of a care plan document. It's a resource that sits on the outside, kind of nesting around lots of referenced resources inside of it. And so the server that does the post, receives the post request, is responsible for updating the IDs of the resources, all the little parts and pieces, as they get stored so that the relationships remain intact that were intended when the data was provided. And that is true whether you're posting a care plan or a referral document or a service request or anything like that. That's the behavior of the post. And that's where we're having trouble right now. And so it doesn't just affect the referral document, it affects anything that's being posted.
Got it.
Yep. One thing, because we're also doing a transaction post, and actually what we did is we changed it to a put, and that way the server has to use the resources, the IDs that you provide, and provided your resources are unique, then that might work. So just a thought.
I think I'll try that as a workaround, Dave. Thanks. But that's dangerous.
Well, sure, absolutely. No, it's for a connect.
Just for demo. Yeah. Let me try in the background. That I'll call in and we'll give that a try and we'll see if that works. Good suggestion. Thank you.
Yeah, but I agree, it's dangerous in the real world.
Yes, if you'll just give him a minute to look at it, we can provide feedback before we try too much. Let's just, I haven't looked at what you sent at all, but we're looking at that now and we'll get back to you.
Okay, great. Well, as everyone, I know we intend to finish in the next half hour. But, I think for the story, I think, our objectives are met. We show how we can use multiple FHIR IGs to demonstrate data exchange across the continuum. I know there's a lot of opportunity, and again, we could target September, where we can show more different types of data exchange beyond just the functional and cognitive assessments, and the ELTSS plan is really looking at how we can build off, FOSSI is published in the Dell, whether we do need to have another, something also, I welcome your input. Do we need to have a FHIR IG for FOSSI? or is it something where, you know, again, do you modify the existing PASIO functional assessment IGs? I'm not a fire IG expert, so figuring out how we can support HCBS systems that are going to start adopting, or, you know, they will start adopting the ELTSS plan, and we want to support them using HCBS assessments. How can they leverage the DEL and current standardized functional assessment?
Yeah, so one of the things we've been looking at in the PASIO group, and we did not show it here, but really was the, you know, we have the instrumental activities of daily living, which are all FASI related.
Right.
And so we have that in our implementation guide, which we didn't really test it here. The other thing that we've also been looking at is devices, you know, like what devices are needed by the patient. And what devices, even more specifically, are needed to perform the assessments.
Mm-hmm.
So, and the devices required by the patient is, believe that's a FASI assessment as well. So I think, you know, I'm not sure that we necessarily need an IG specifically for FASI. It's more of a, you know, it's sort of like a list of. Well, I think it can fit under, at least we believe it can fit under what we've done for PASIO as far as the functional and status. So we'll see if that works.
So my understanding, Dave, from the mapping that I believe, you know, the mapping for FASI to the G, is it the G? what's equivalent across all the
EG.
EG?
Section G, yeah.
That the FASI incorporates more person-centered elements
Mm-hmm.
that don't exist in the PASIO. So is this an opportunity to make changes to the PASIO functional assessment so it does incorporate more of these person-centered elements?
Yeah, I think we can definitely look into that. Absolutely. Okay. So we are looking to try to go into September 2020 ballot. So, we need to have the substantive changes done by July 5th. But, that gives us a little bit of time.
Okay, yeah, because definitely I agree. It's not, and as Lisa was noting at the beginning, what we do within the Gravity project is we don't want to go and create a new fire IG if it's not, needed. We want to reuse, or if we do have to create one, we want to do as much reusing of other existing fire IGs to support the work. So if this is, we want to advance HCBS assessments, is saying, okay, how can we either reuse the PASIO functional assessment IG, or update the PASIO functional assessment IG so that it can be the best available standard for HCBS assessment.
Yeah, we can definitely, we can look into that more fully, and if we identify an issue, we can bring it up.
Dave, this is Lisa. I'm working on a lot of things at the same time, so I apologize if you answered this already. But I looked through the DEL, and I looked at some of the data elements that they have in there, which are very model of use oriented. A form, question, and these are the possible answers that go with it. Mm-hmm. I'm just wondering, how did you move from form questions to, like, let's say the question would imply, if you thought about it, that the patient had a certain procedure, or the question implies that the patient had a certain symptom or a certain problem. How did you move between the DEL being oriented as questions and answers that would be on a form, like a questionnaire kind of resource? How did you decide which fire resources to populate? Did you just do them as individual observations, and it's really model of use, not model of meaning, or you just you add the question with its answer as an observation, but you don't try to get to what's the underlying fundamental clinical resource that would be created? How did you guys traverse that situation?
Yeah, so that was kind of, one of the later things we did in the preparation for the Connectathon. So, it's probably not fully complete. But essentially right now it creates, it looks at, right now it looks at the type of, there's a mapping that occurs. So it looks to see whether, which things are functional, which things are cognitive. And it then creates the appropriate Passio resources to do that, and they're all based off of observations.
So are the resources all observations, or are you making resources that are conditions and procedures, or are you only recording just an observation that would be like the observation code is the question code given in the DEL, and the observation value is one of those potential answers that is given in the DEL? Did
Yes.
you make them all observations, or did you figure out how to map from the question to what they're actually talking about clinically is going on with the patient?
No, with the latter part we're not doing. We just we took and created observation. The bundles there. We have essentially 4 major resources. We have the bundled functional status, which is kind of the top level of the assessment, and then under that is a functional status for each of the questions. And they all, they're all in the, within the HAS member of the bundled functional, of the bundled functional status. And same thing with cognitive. And so, so that's, and that was one of the things that was sort of highlighted in this Connectathon, is that there are still some things that need to happen to really make this work smoothly between what the information that we're getting from the pseudo DEL, which is based off of the actual DEL, and what we're trying to do with Passio. So there's still some challenges there, but we didn't try to determine, okay, this should be a procedure, this should be a condition.
It's like what it implies. It's hard. It's a really hard. I looked at it myself and I'm like, holy moly, this would be a tremendous amount of work and a lot of different points of view. Probably people, debating and deciding, what does this question with its answers, what does it really imply would be in the patient's chart clinically? That would be tough.
Dave, this is Michelle. I was just going to answer the model of use versus model of meaning part of the question.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so I think for the first pass at the mapping, it was based on a model of use, approach. So represent the answer with the coded value, but model of meaning has always been in the background, and it's something that's getting revisited as well. But it's certainly and you recognize this, it's a larger endeavor to think through the different appropriate sets of conditions or codes that would represent an answer, appropriate answer. So tailored to the patient and their condition. I just wanted you to know.
Seemed like a big thing. Dave, you mentioned 4 bundles, and I wrote down, I heard functional status and cognitive status. What are the other 2 bundles that you're creating?
So no, there are only those 2 bundles. And so under bundled functional status, there are a collection of functional status resources for each of the questions. And then same thing under the cognitive. So.
Got it.
Yep.
Thanks.
This is Matt Elrod. I work for the Passio group from the clinical side, and I would take this opportunity again to say that if we can address this model of use versus model of meaning, it would be huge from the aspect of clinician burden, that there are too many times that we're answering questions because of whoever wants them answered a certain way. And if we could just have what we're documenting be what's utilized, that would make a huge difference. And I think there's an amazing opportunity to do something like that in the post-acute care community right now. So I would encourage us to continue to not lose sight of that.
It's interesting, Matt. Matt, this is Lisa. Ages ago, and you know, Evelyn is his notorious for being the person who tried to keep track of all things care plan for the longest time. And ages ago, I want to say 3 years ago, maybe longer, there was an effort that was undertaken in IHE that is about a hearing plan of care for a baby.
Mhm.
And the folks who were working on that, you know, we were working, that's the early origins of the SDC, structured data capture, really came from IHE. And they invented the notions of the form manager and the form filler and the form designer. All of those things really were rooted there. And work was done to envision a way of writing down. We were actually using CQL in the very early days when CQL was just barely getting started. And we invented a data element library paradigm that would be based not on the end game where people look at forms and define those as if those are data elements. They took a rudimentary view of looking at what data is actually represented in a consolidated CDA document, the entries that have been specified. This would be like the clinical information that you're talking about, Matt, that doctors actually write down. And then we use CQL to write expression language for how a data element in the DELS form of thinking about it, one of these model of use question and answers that's on a form. And we wrote expressions that Bryn Rhodes, actually, I think, and a couple of the guys from MITRE worked on this project for me. They wrote CQL expressions to describe how you get from the model of use, from the model of meaning data elements to the model of use data elements. And we found that I think something like 8% of the time, there was what we called an easy map, a straight map. You pick up a data element in the model of meaning and boom, you plug it in a model of use. Like an example would be last name is last name, first name is first name, date of birth is date of birth. But then we got into areas where the expressions required you to look at multiple model of meaning elements in order to determine one model of use. And that was like a middle level of complexity. And I think something like, 50% or so were in that bucket. And then the high end bucket was where the CQL expression was so complicated, you had to do like processing logic against the model of meaning data elements to really make a complex transformation to move from, it took multiple data elements, and not just multiple, but you had to kind of do multiple elements and then add some kind of a transformational rule that was programmed on top of that in order to plug into one single model of use data element. And it was doable, but it basically took the notion of what does a form filler or form manager, depending on who's going to do the role, whatever system is responsible for converting or populating the form given some underlying model of meaning data. That was a very complex job. And I did it ages ago. I'll dig around on my hard drive. I don't know if we ended up publishing it as a paper on the IHE website or if it was done in the context of some other work. I'll see what I can find to dig back up. But again, MITRE was actually the company that did all of the writing down the CQL rules to get back and forth between the two kind of world orders. And
I'm sorry.
might be informative.
Yeah, no, that sounds great. So was that Chris Mazel or?
Yes, it was Chris Mazel. It was Bryn Rhodes was involved. He did the CQL part, and then Mark. I haven't
Kramer?
remembered his one.
Mark Kramer.
Mark Kramer. Yep.
Okay. Well, I know both Mark and Chris Mazel. They work in my group, so
Okay.
I will follow up with them.
Thanks. Okay. I'm also, this is Evelyn keeping track of time. So just want to check in on Nancy and the right.
So I'm just having a hard time reaching the developer right now. I think he must be away from the desk right now. But I just wanted to get back, from what I can see of what the problem is you're describing. I think the way the server's set up, when we created all of our test data, we had predefined IDs. So normally the Fire server would assign IDs, but we kind of turn that off so we keep those preassigned IDs. So I think if you use a put for that transaction instead of a post, I think it will probably go. It's my guess. I haven't had a chance to get feedback from
Yeah, I
him.
tried it in the background, Nancy. So that assumption assumes that you like pre-populated all those resources to begin with. So I don't have any. I think the way that you guys were able to make that work is probably in the beginning somebody did some kind of a post internally, and then you of a certain resource, maybe sort of like a stub level post, and then you gave that ID to Dave Hill or whoever was trying to send data to you so that they could do puts. And we don't, like the resources that we're trying to send to you, you would have to send us a whole set of IDs. And
Yeah, I think if you just use the Betsy Smith, the Betsy Smith Johnson ID that we've been using, that's all you need to do to work. I think that's what you use, Dave, right? The rest of them,
Well,
you can.
Yeah, to reference the patient, that's what I used,
Right.
things like that. But I also
but each resource has its own ID.
Sure. So I created IDs through a SHA-1 generation based on.
Oh, you did. Okay.
It's completely random and it's based on time and all of that. So.
But we would need, like the service request, for example, if I want to post, if you want me to do a put of a service request, it means that somehow to support the demo, you would already create a service request on your system that's connected up the way, and then you'd give me that ID, and then I would have to do a put. Or you'd create a service request I would somehow query for service requests associated with Betsy, so I could pick up the ID that your server uses, and then I would do a put to use our information to update what's already on your system. And I'm just saying that's possible for us to do something like that to support a demo, but that's I think we have two possibilities. We could work with you after to complete this and flesh it out as for demo purposes, or we could take a different path and look more deeply at how the post is supposed to work, and then work through testing that together.
Yeah, I recommend that, long term the post is the solution. But I mean, for what we did is I did a put with randomized IDs, and that I didn't have to go and ask them for IDs. That's what I put in the put, and so those resources were created on the server with my ID.
Well, maybe we could work with you, Dave. I'll connect you because we tried that in the background. Do you have the syntax? Could you send me the transaction bundle, and then I'll email it to my guys, and we'll look at how you did it. Maybe we can learn from that.
Yeah, sure. It's it's a big, huge, long ID that's almost impossible for.
Yeah, we have random IDs on ours too, but we're getting an error message when we try to do the put. So I think it's something syntactical maybe. If you're saying.
Yeah. So you just need to get the tech guys online together and say what the error message is and figure out what's happening, and we'll get it resolved.
Yeah. So Dave, that bundle that we have from Becky, that was that XML file with all the resources in it that we basically seeded our ELTSS server with initially. Is that is that a file that would be helpful for?
No, those are predefined. Those were the ones that actually came from our data sheet, and those were predefined.
Right. Okay, I got you.
Yeah,
right.
I can send Lisa. I can send you what we did.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
And then Nancy, I'll follow up with you afterwards offline.
Sure.
Okay. All right. So I think we are going to conclude we're scheduled to conclude at 4 o'clock, but I think, and this is very helpful conversation you all just had. And I think if there's an opportunity to do, to post, because we do want to support those type of transactions. But before we go, I just, again, this is end of day, and I know there's been so much testing, and appreciate having so many still on the Zoom after 2.5 days of testing. It'd be great if we can capture just your thoughts. How could we, as we think of care, I think this is an opportunity we really can connect multiple Fire IG supporting care coordination activities. What are things that we've learned from this and we can do better for the next Connect-a-thon? So I'll just open it up. I know many of you have been quiet. Or for the observers too, what would you have wanted to see different for us to consider?
Hey, Evelyn, this is Arun. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, Arun.
Great. Are those, in terms of what you're looking for right now, can we offer both process questions as well as content questions? Because I think that that's a great, what exactly are you looking for and what's appropriate here?
Well, we have to think about as we have more, like you said, this is our first time having this care coordination track. It's not been, it's not tied to one. Many of the tracks are tied to either testing. As we know, a Fire IG has to be tested twice before it goes through the ballot cycle, right? So a lot of these, the Connect-a-thon tracks are organized around testing specific Fire IGs to inform the ballot. But this is not, our care coordination track is not tied, some of the participants, Passio and Gravity are balloting, but it's really to show coordination across multiple Fire IGs.
Got it. Thank you. And I also noticed that whether it's on Slack or on the chat somewhere, there's a Google Doc that we can also go in and type our comments in, right?
Yes. Yes.
So I think some people may be more comfortable just typing in their comments. That's what I'll do, as opposed to taking up time with the entire group here.
Okay.
Yes, it's in the chat right now. The last message.
Right. Thank you. Super helpful. And just while I'm talking here, I just want to let you all know, Evelyn, I think you're doing an amazing job, and I'm super impressed.
Yeah, this is Gay. I think everything was really great and as great as it could be and super organized. I do know that you guys wish, and I wish too, that we had a full EHR that participated. And I'm hoping that, maybe next time, given the number of folks we had on this, that perhaps in September we can have people use their connections and networking and encourage EHRs to participate in September.
Great point, Gay. Yep, definitely. We are missing robust EHR capability to support what we need here, and they play a key role in coordination activities. Also having HIE, like more HIE. I know I appreciate having several HIEs sit in and observe. So that is helpful to know how can we bring in more HIEs. The other part is acknowledging too that we did do a lot of outreach, and the reality is many systems, EHRs included, are not yet, they wanted to put, we had potential like NetSmart, I will say, wanted to participate, but they could only query for a CDA-based care plan, right? So we couldn't, they wouldn't be able to support the Connect-a-thon. So it's something for us, and we'll put it in our lessons learned as well. And that's why I wanted Lisa to show that she can generate both a service request referral and then a CDA-based one, because I think this is the reality of implementation right now, that we live in a world where both will need to be supported. Anything else while we have less? Please, I'm just opening it up. I know it's end of day. And if you're shy, Arun, thank you for saying, please use the Google document. You can even make it anonymous. So you don't need to put your name. And this, again, this makes it better. And this is something we also share with HL7. So they make the Connect-a-thons better. We tried to not make it too technical for those that are observing and need to tie it into what's real for them. But we know Connect-a-thon is this exactly, bringing disparate systems, disparate system actors together to show how they can read or query and find data that exists in another system and exchange it.
This is Jan Oldenburg, and I just do want to note that the cheat sheet you guys provided ahead of time was extremely helpful. It also might be great to be able to provide even just the scenes you plan to demonstrate ahead of time, maybe even as part of the cheat sheet.
This is Forrest. I'll second the cheat sheet. Was awesome.
This is the cheat sheet the Passio team did, correct?
Yeah. Yep.
Okay.
Hey, Sima. Hey, this is Lorraine, CMS. I just want to say, Evan, thank you. Great job. And I'm thinking maybe it's just me, but maybe not. I'm not an IT guru. It would be nice in the future if we're doing these virtual connectathons to be able to join Zoom or whatever platform you use, like 2 up at the same time without having to have 2 or 3 different computers and to be able to hop to different kind of presentations. But other than that, I think it was amazing what's been accomplished so far.
Thank you, Lorraine. And we appreciate that. And that's why we wanted to have the debrief up front. Like, care coordination did not happen in parallel because we needed the other tracks. And many tracks do occur in parallel. So it's figuring out for those that do have synergies is how to support participants being able to join more than one at a time.
Hey, on that topic, kind of related. So first of all, I agree. Everybody did such an excellent job, especially, you know, this being the first coordinated care track and also the first virtual connectathon, and troubleshooting both of those things simultaneously. It went amazingly well considering all of that. But one thing I think that, you know, I had a little bit of difficulty with yesterday was I think that I was a little confused about which Zoom link I was supposed to use. And I think there was kind of a shift, and some of the care coordination discussions wound up being on the Gravity Zoom meeting. And, you know, I know everybody kind of tries to put together all this stuff in advance and then things happen organically, but it might be helpful. What we tried to do on the Passio, and we weren't also 100% successful, but was to put up kind of a slide that said if, you know, we kind of moved somewhere else to have a discussion, like just to let everybody know and direct them to wherever that was, in the case that the schedule changes as it inevitably does throughout the day. So that's just kind of I think a lesson learned / recommendation.
Great, thank you, Jessica. We did present our agenda on Wednesday, but we appreciate we also kicked off, and not everybody kicked off with us, to know that we weren't going to open up the Zoom on Thursday. But we definitely, like we did today, we did open it up and have someone, Katya, keep it open so people knew we were at other tracks between 10 and 1:30. But definitely,
yeah,
I think,
Evelyn, this is Lisa. I think those 2 comments, the last 2 comments, go together, because we ran into that problem in that because you can't have 2 Zoom meetings open, that if we would go somewhere else, then we wouldn't be there. You couldn't keep one open with something up on the screen and go to the next place. So if we could solve that, it's better than trying to find multiple people who can use their computers to keep the message going.
Right. Yeah.
On the MITRE team. I agree with that as well. This is Arun. I think, you know, you did a great job, and some people did a great job letting people know where to go. But even with that, I was confused with having to navigate 3 different rooms. That was a little difficult. On a process note, or on a more content note, I'm wondering, I don't know how HL7 does this, but I'm wondering what role there is for self-advocates and for individuals, the advocacy community, to be a part of this, and having more targeted outreach into that community might have yielded maybe potentially different results in terms of how we've approached this. So I just put that out there as well.
Thanks, Arun. We do have a patient empowerment group, but it's a patient empowerment group, not a person empowerment group. So at HL7, and some of them did join here. I think that was also a great point from Carrie. I don't know if she's still on, but what Carrie was representing the federally qualified health centers. So she made a great point this morning, noting that, you know, as an FQHC, she had lots of great comments throughout, but she said, you know, they have limited resources, limited time, that they don't think that they'd be able to participate in person in the Baltimore Connect-a-thon. But also noting, you know, that they may not have access to a patient app, and they were able, you know, how could they still participate in this but receive the information via a web or, you know, email. So things like this that really meet the information needs of different stakeholder groups is important.
Hi, Evelyn. This is Carrie. I'm still here.
Oh, you're there.
Listening in.
Please carry on, Carrie.
Thanks for the plug. I did actually have a question about somebody who is a similar stakeholder with us and them playing the part of the EHR. I know that Ocean hosts Epic, or NextGen, sorry. And would they be an organization that could play the role of the EHR?
Oh, absolutely. And we will also have, we're hoping to, through the multiple chronic conditions, MCC e-care plan project, that we are developing a person-centered multiple chronic conditions plan, and we will have that Fire IG. So it'll be a new Fire IG developed for September. It will not be balloted yet, but they have, we have an existing pilot group led under OHSU. So it's an Oregon Health Systems, yeah. So they are coming to the table, and they will be piloting. So we will have EHR systems available through their pilot.
Okay, I will chat with Carly as well. She's with the Oregon PCA, but she has some connections with Ocean, and we have some connections there. And maybe for September, I can get them to join as well.
That would be great. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, that would be awesome. We're hoping, this is Lisa, we're hoping that some of the recordings that we've done, and the reason why Evelyn and I have worked so hard to capture the progress here and the story, is that we think that some of this will be useful in attracting and informing other folks about the possibilities. I know very, very late in the game, a vendor named Z Omega came to the table. They showed up at our session yesterday, and they make care plans. And so they're looking at, and I think that if we can use some of our recordings and slide decks to talk about what's going on, to get the word out, I think that our second attempt will have more participants.
Yeah. Well, thank you guys. It's been really informative. Just listening in has been really, really helpful to me to know who to bring to the table next time and how to market it for everybody.
Yeah.
So thank you.
This is Liz, and I guess I just would say, I learned so much on this whole thing, and just kudos to the team. I've been just kind of reflecting on what would make this so observer friendly, if you will. And so I appreciated yesterday the breaks for doing some demos, because there were times when it was very technical. But then, and today, obviously the report out and the demos are fantastic. But maybe just kind of looking at the schedule and kind of highlighting for folks where there's great opportunity for the observer in particular, where it's not so kind of leads on the coding side. I think that would make it friendly for newbies and people who just not so much on the coding aspect.
That's a great point. And to that, Lisa and I had discussed too, it's just we didn't have enough time, but, so that we would have videos ready, right? Recordings, so I would chime in with Lisa had thought with the patient care she had proposed is that we have like care plan overview session, right? So, we would have what is, just like even what I had, what is ELTSS? What is the Multiple Chronic Conditions Project? What is a care plan? Just very high level, what's the domain analysis model? Things that people can, even while, because you want, just like a natural, I would say a live connect-a-thon, you have things happening. So you have the same situation, you have to decide, what table you sit at, right? But you can't sit at 2 tables at the same time. But we can have these videos available for observers if they don't want to watch people like fixing code or their systems. They can use the time to review the videos available.
It'd almost be nice to envision like a path,
Yeah.
like a pathway. So if you came as a less technical person, you could see, oh, you'd all be here in the beginning and get some overview or whatever, and then maybe there's a deep dive for some of the implementers, and the suggestion would be to take a path if you're an observer and hop up and go watch this video about care planning or something. It would be good.
That would be really helpful as somebody who's a first-time Connect-a-thon attendee. Once I got here, it was less confusing than it was in the anticipation. For example, you know, it's not clear if you're not doing code that you actually have to be connected into the Zulip chat at all points.
Yeah.
But that whole, here's a roadmap through the process would be extraordinarily helpful. So you could think about when scenarios are being figured out or demoed.
Thanks, Jan. I totally agree with you. That was Jan, right?
Yep, that was.
Yeah, thanks, Jan. I second that. That's a great point and completely agree. This is Arun.
Yeah. Yep, and I think that's actually excellent feedback for HL7, because I think, as you've seen from their schedule, they do have things happening in the background. They have Intro to Fire. They have different, you know, and people, you sometimes use the Connect-a-thon to do some HL7 training, but it is very HL7 specific. And we have the opportunities, we have specific tracks on certain themes or domains that we do similar things. It's a great point.
I think this is a gay. I think it's important to note, however, that it's important to have the domain experts and the clinical SMEs on the actual, you know, like Connect-a-thon calls, because, you know, well, I was going to say we really need. I'm kind of an in-between person. But anyways, the feedback is just really needed. I think when the developer folks will code something, and it's great to get that instant feedback. So I would not vote for complete separation.
Oh yeah, no, I agree. I think it's having like in parallel that with someone saying, okay, this time you're all going to configure your systems for testing, making sure you can read write to each other, and then have the observers take some, you know, lesson. And then you could say to everyone, okay, don't demo yet or test, and then bring everyone back together.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. Okay, everyone. No, this is really helpful. Again, your feedback, like it makes the process better. It makes the content better. It makes this more useful. Those that have known me for many years, I always very much advocate for, you know, not developing a standard in silo. It has to be tested, and you have to engage the community at large. And Connect-a-thons are a great way to do that. Besides pilots, real-time pilots, but this is, yeah, where we do, and I think the virtual piece, I would say too, you know, like Lisa acknowledged for the Gravity track, is that we are, unlike when you're face-to-face that you have to sit or hover over someone's screen, this allowed everyone to see what everybody else was doing at the same time. So it allows us to learn from each other and see things, you know, and two, we also learned from the Gravity, I mean, it wasn't all in the Passio, but it is important to toggle, just like we had, you know, you toggle like Lisa did between the view, the use case view, the images, and then the code, and the Passio team did the same thing. I think it's just very valuable to always show both in parallel. So those that care about the code understand, and then those that want to see the user interface or the results of that can see it at the same time. Okay, anything else for anyone else? Again, I will plug to please put your comments, send us your comments, and we will incorporate them. Both Lisa and I have to get ready to put out together our track reports. Lisa's probably more ahead than I am. Mine's scheduled at 5. Yeah, and you're welcome to join that one. I'm not going to do slides. Katya's been helping me. I'm just going to do the word Google document right now. But I appreciate, again, everyone participating, so many of you, and I hope we can keep the same participation level for September. And please do give us feedback so we can make it better. We do want to have another care coordination track. We want to do more care planning. We'd love to go through all 9 scenes.
Yeah, be sure to leave a footprint, because Natasha and I have been looking at the Excel spreadsheet that the registration list came out, and it's not great, you know, depending on what box you checked to say what track maybe you were interested in, it's a little bit fuzzy. And so if you haven't left your footprint somewhere, you know, chat out your email to Katya or Natasha, or put your email into that Google document, something, leave a sign of your interest and an email address where we can be in touch and stay in communication.
Yep, we actually had for this track we have 41 sign up, not all tested. That's pretty good, yeah.
I think I saw close to 60 on here at one point in this presentation.
Yeah, I was gonna say the Zoom was up to much more.
Yeah, no, this is the actual sign up for the track, the care coordination track. But definitely, yeah, we had over 60 that joined, which is great.
That's an example of something that feels opaque to somebody who's new. I signed up for the track. I don't know how I was supposed to leave a footprint during it.
Oh, nope, that's it. It's more just tracking who logged into the Zoom, so we see all the participants. Yeah, so that I think is good. Besides, you know, the other thing too is some folks signed up online, like we had a sign up sheet, and some did and acknowledge what system actor, what role they were going to play, and we had a majority sign up. So it's also evident for us. That's why we did the slides, because we had many observers.
Is it usually this big, Evelyn?
No.
It's smaller or bigger?
Smaller.
So that's
it's
pretty
usually a pretty
impressive.
big event, but you know, to that point, imagine 60 people trying to stand around one round table. I don't know how we would have done it live.
There's usually about 400 and some, you know, more or less, depending on where it's located at the whole Connect-a-thon. And, you know, we had, someone said close to 90 at one point on this.
So I think that means there's a lot of interest in this topic.
Yeah.
And I think that means that this is an area and a field that there's a lot of low-hanging fruit. And if we all bring ourselves together and we grow this initiative, we're going to be able to see, I think, a lot more progress quicker.
Absolutely.
So I'm wondering how we can take advantage, not for the entire Connect-a-thon, but just for this specific track. How do we grow this, and what are the systematic steps each of us needs to be playing so that the next time at the next Connect-a-thon we're making a lot more progress, and there's a lot more eyes kind of trying to solve what are some pretty basic problems. How do we grow this? Because I think there's an opportunity.
Absolutely, Arun. Yeah, part of it is
Fundraising, I'll take it, Evelyn. I'll take a swipe at it. I would say that one of the biggest challenges, and I talked about this today in the Gravity track, is that the Gravity community is just a big group of people, like you said, trying to work together on solving this problem. But it takes a tremendous amount of effort to do all of the content definition, and you know, Dave Hill has a big team working on the cognitive and the functional status work, and there's a big team at Gravity working on our Fire IG, and at the bottom line is we have to have funding models that help us find organizations that want to drive this kind of work forward and are willing to support it financially, so that we have resources who can be devoted to making this kind of progress.
Yeah. Yeah, and these are, and I'd also acknowledge that this would, a virtual Connectathon is more reasonable, you know, from a cost perspective. The Connectathon, I think they're close. What are they? $300 or over $250 to in person?
Yeah, there's usually a fee that is, you know, takes into consideration buying lunch or breakfast or and the space charges. It's not a tremendous amount, but it does, you get a ballroom and a, you know, a facility and food, and it adds up. But it's really the background planning and orchestration that goes into it that is the thing that ends up costing a fair amount.
Yep. So everyone, I'm going to have to adjourn us. We do need to work on our track report outs, and we encourage you to continue to send your feedback. This is something definitely, and I will debrief with everyone from the ONC team. We appreciate their support for this track. So we will take this back and meet with them and figure out how can we make this better? How can we make it something that will bring the right stakeholder groups and accelerate what we are trying to accelerate through fire development and testing. So thank you very much, everyone. We really appreciate your time and your participation. Please do continue to put, you know, the Google documents there. You're welcome to put positive and constructive feedback. It will only make us better.
Evelyn, I'm going to make one last plug. I know, sorry, you're trying to close here, but I will say if you go to the Gravity Confluence page, there is a MyHIN Interopathon that's coming up at the tail end of May. It's a 2-day event, and we don't have experience going to one of these before. I know that the venue is a little bit different. It's virtual, but they're organizing it in a slightly different way. And if you enjoyed today and you thought you'd get a lot out of it, it's a very inexpensive registration and 2 days of activity that I think even just to go to some of the training sessions would be worth it. And you'd have another opportunity, at least from the Gravity side, to work with our SDOHCC IG and explore some of these fire capabilities. May 28, 29.
Thanks, Lisa. Okay, everyone. Well, we'll adjourn. Thank you again. Thank you so much, Gravity, team, and the Passio ELTSS. We could have obviously not done this without you. So congratulations on a successful Connectathon, and we will meet again.